Hi everyone, it's Tamara here with another card making tutorial. This time I'm doing a simple scene card using Copic colours and the new stamp set from Wondering Wabbit called Meet the Tidewells and the Seabrooks. So I've already printed out my images onto some Copic Expressive cardstock, so let's get started with some colouring. So there's also a few sentiments that come with the set, and so I've used one on my card today as well, retired and ready to reflax. So they're all kind of mermaid related sentiments that come with the set. They're such a fun set, some beautiful images and some great sentiments as well. Now I will have all the colours displayed up in the top left hand corner, but I'll also have them all written down in the description box below for you as well if you need to refer to any of the colours that I use for this colouring tutorial. So I've initially gone in with my lightest colour, the E30, to set out the base for my sand, and then gone in with the darkest colour, the E44, just coming back in to add a few kind of little bit of texture pieces to my sand, then blending that out with the E43 and just slowly working that in through to that E30 marker. Now I'm going straight over those darkest colours with my E33 marker, but also extending that marker out to blend into that E30. Then we'll blend that E33 out with our E31, just trying to get a nice smooth blend coming into that E30 coloured cardstock that we've done initially. And that will be our highlight colour, and I'm bringing that in now just to smooth out that E33 marker and just blend that into that highlight portion of our sand. Now I'm just going to use some sea markers just to add a little bit of dimension to the bubbles coming off his little lawnmower and the seaweed that he's mowing. So I've gone in with C3, C0, and then finish off with C00, and then just go out with B00 to blend that out to make it kind of look watery. And I'm going to be using that B000 marker to do our first layer of water. Going straight out. I like to go up a little bit further up my marker. I find that you do get a much smoother blend when you're working quite far away up the end of the marker. So I'm slightly going over the sand so that it looks like a little bit that it just goes back into the distance to that water. As you can see, I've really gone back quite far on that marker now to get that nice smooth first layer of colour down onto our cardstock. Now my darkest colour that I'm going to be using is B02. So I'm just working very carefully around our little lawn mowing man and our seaweed, because this is quite a dark colour. Then I'm going to go over that and blend that out with B01 and then slightly bring that into that sand that we've got at the base. Flicking out from my image, I find that's a lot easier when you're working around images to go out from them. So just blending that out, just coming around from his face and head and making sure we're getting a nice smooth blend out of that colour. Then I'll bring in the B00 and just go over that and blend that up into our B000. Just making sure that we're blending down into that sand to make sure we've got a nice smooth blend between where the water starts and the sand starts. So again, just moving my hand back as I'm going up to make sure I get that nice smooth blend. And then we'll go over that again with that hand really far back to get our final layer of our B000 over the top, coming up to the very top of our card. Now for our little lawnmower, I'm going to make it look kind of like a shell. So I'm just using my E84, E81, and then blend that out with my E50. So I just went in initially with my E50 to work out where my shadows would be. Then put my shadows in with my E84, blend out with our E81, and then blend out with that original color again, the E50. And just obviously it's going to be a lot lighter on the top where that sun rays are hitting it from the top of that water. Now we're going to just colour both the grasses and the seaweed the same colour. So I'm using the darkest marker will be G09. We'll blend that out with the G07 and just kind of putting it down the base of those little pieces of seaweed that are coming up. Then we'll blend that out with the YG05. So I'm also kind of blending that up into the seaweed, but also down into that sand. So we get kind of like a nice smooth transition from that grassy seaweed into our sand. And doing that again with the YG03 as well. And then filling in the rest of our highlights of our seaweed up the top. So just making sure that we're getting that nice blend. So I'll bring that E30 in just to smooth that green out so that it blends nicely into our sand. Now we'll start colouring our image. So I do like to go in with my background first and get that all laid out and then colour my image afterwards, but you can do it any way that you like. So I've gone in with my lightest marker, which will be my E00, to set out where my shadows are going to be. My darkest colour will be my E04. So obviously his little mustache will throw a shadow as well as his glasses. We see the base of his hands between those little fingers. Just the base of his nose and his eyebrows will throw a little bit of shadow as well. Then we'll blend that out with our E33. Just making sure we blend that into that highlight space as well as those little fingers. Bring in our E21 to blend out our E33. Just slowly blending into what will be our highlight. So really the top of his head, his top of his nose, and the top of his ears and hands will be our highlight colour of our E00. And now I'm just going to reinforce that. It didn't quite get as smooth a blend as what I wanted, so I'm going to bring in our E04 again and just go through those exact same colours again. So blend that E04 out with our E33, just making sure we're getting a nice smooth blend between each of those colours. Come in with our E21 to blend that out, just slowly working. I did forget to colour behind those glasses. Obviously there would be colour, the same skin colour behind our glasses. And then we'll finally blend that out with our E00. And that's got a beautiful highlight, and I think that's really enhanced those highlights and shadow areas of his hair, of his skin, sorry. Now I'm going to go in with our lightest marker to work out where our shadows will be for his hair. So C2 will be our lightest. Then we'll come in with our C6. So I'm just doing little flicking motions up to where his little mustache and hair will go, just making sure we're getting some shadows put in there. Flick that out with our C4, just trying those nice little sharp flicking motions. And do the same on that mustache, and I'll bring that final colour C2 back in to complete his hair colouring. Now I'll just get our C markers again for his little white shirt that I'm going to do. So C3 and blend that out with the C1. It's only a small amount of space, so we only needed the two colours for that. For his little bow tie, I'm just doing some blues. So B39 is our darkest shadow colour. Blend that out with the E37, and then I was tossing up between the colours because I'm going to do his Fluke the same colours, but I chose the E24 because obviously again it's only a small amount on that bow tie. I'm going to use some browns for that little waistcoat that he's got under his cardigan. So E19 is our darkest. Blend that out with the E17, and our lightest marker will be our E13. I'm going to do a nice little green cardigan for this gorgeous little man to wear. So I'm setting out with my YG01, my lightest marker, where my shadows will be. And now I'll bring our darkest marker in, our BG99, to set out our shadows. So we see under the back of him, the sun's kind of coming from that top right hand side, under his arms, and kind of where his head or neck comes over will be in shadow as well. Then we'll blend that out with the BG96, blending that into our highlight space, and come in with our YG17 to blend that out. Just working in little flicking motions so we get a nice smooth blend between our colours. And we'll bring our YG13 in, and then bring our YG01 back in as our highlight colour, and just wiggle that around to get a nice smooth blend between those colours. And we'll start colouring up his fluke. So I'm going in with our lightest colour, which will be our B02, to work out where my shadows will be. So we see the base of his fluke, also underneath that cardigan will be in shadow, and the bottoms of those two fins. And just coming up and around and just going underneath those, that jumper and little vest. Blending that out now with our B37 from our B39. Going now in with our B24 to blend out that, and then bring that lightest colour in again, the B02, as our highlight colour. Just working in little circular motions while we finish off that nice blend. Now it wasn't quite blended as much as I wanted, so I'm going to go back in with all those markers, the same markers again, the B39. Blend that out with our B37. Now there is a little bit of a gap between the 37 and the 24, so I'm going to do just a little bit of tip to tip, just to make sure we get a smooth blend between those two markers. I didn't need much, but I just needed a little bit just to make sure of that smooth blend. Now I'm going with the B02. But for the center part, I thought I needed a little bit of tip to tip to get a bit of a smoother blend. So you will see me now bring in that B24. Just do a little bit of tip to tip here, just to make sure it's the smoothest blend that we can get. And now I'm just going to use those E markers, the darkest E markers that we used for the sand, just to put a little bit of texture to the sand. So our darkest marker will go into those really dark areas that we've made our highlight as our shadow, and then the only other color I'm going to use and slowly go into that lighter space will be our E43. So not very much, but just a little bit. I also wanted to add a little bit more interest to our water as well. It was looking a little bit plain. I didn't want too much in there because I want our little lawn mowing gentleman to be our main interest. But I thought just using a very light blue, so very similar color to the blue that we used for our water, to add some little fishes swimming around up there. So I did need to stamp this a few times just to make it dark enough for you to see, but not too dark that it overtook our image. It's only meant to kind of just add a little bit of interest. Initially I was going to stamp up and one down the bottom, but as everyone likes to do the rule of threes, I thought just another one at the top to kind of bring your eye to the sentiment and then down to our image was the best way to go. Now I'm just adding a little bit of glossy accents, just again to add just that little bit of interest to our scene, to his glasses, and also to these bubbles to add some interest. And now that that's dried, you can see that it just adds that little bit of texture and shine to our card, and I think it really finishes it off nicely. Now I've also cut and scored a slimline, mini slimline card base in white, and now I've added some glue to the back of our panel. Give that a good press down. And this is our finished card for this tutorial. This was so fun to make. These images are just so gorgeous, as are the sentiments that come with it. And just adding that little bit of interest with the little fishes in the background and that little bit of glossy accents to his glasses and the water just adds to this card. I hope you've enjoyed this card making tutorial. If you have, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see any future videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.